And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining me today. Very much looking forward to visiting with everybody. Again, you're always welcome to join our program by calling in at 701 293 9000. There'll be lots to discuss. I just got a legislative update from U.S. government, U.S. Congress, so I've got some things to bring up on that. We certainly have our Friday topics and headlines to share, and want to make sure that we're still getting ready to celebrate Beef Month. Here we are, May 2nd. Beef Month it is. So, great debate. I'm going to need your feedback, folks. I'm thinking about putting out beef recipes on the Weather and Ag in Focus Facebook page every Sunday. Now, maybe that leads to taste testing. Addison, do I have to make those items and bring them into the studio during the week so everybody gets a chance to tell me if that recipe is a pass or fail?
It sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay. As a guy who has to work like through his lunch hour, yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if I start something like that. So, and you know what? If folks are following along on our Facebook page, Weather and Ag in Focus at WDAY, you can tell me if you have better recipes than I, because I'm always on the lookout for good ones. We are at that time of the year where many folks, their days are busy. And I tell you what, the crockpot recipes abound. It is great to know what you're getting ready for meal planning for the day. So if you've got good recipes you want to share, you can also just email them to me, ag@flagfamily.com. Well, it's going to be a hectic day, but a sunshiny one. Today's weather is brought to you by Progressive Ag, the risk management specialist. Really, mostly sunny skies today, looking to get into the low 70s. Winds starting to blow out of the north at 10 to 25 miles an hour. Now, Friday, a little bit cool. There are some light isolated showers around the valley, but the wind is going to start picking up for the weekend. Temperatures getting definitely into the 70s, near 80 degrees for many. So I think I said a high today of 70, that 73, that could actually be tomorrow. Today will be more likely in the 50s. But tomorrow, even though it looks like it'll be warmer, we're definitely going to pick up some wind. So keep the lids on the trash cans. Never know when something might sort of take flight. So let's beware of that out there. And again, that weather brought to you today by Progressive Ag, the risk management specialists that are here for you. Now, as I mentioned, I also have gotten quite a number of updates that are going on congressionally right now in Washington, D.C. So, what are a couple of those things, particularly that are going to affect us here in traditional farm country, if you will? National Corn Growers Association and state corn organizations want Ford to reconsider its decision to phase out a production of trucks that run on ethanol. The corn groups argued in a letter to Ford CEO Jim Farley that the company's flex fuel vehicles are crucial to supporting rural America. I don't think it's uncommon that many folks involved in agriculture are driving those flex fuel vehicles and do so as a choice. Farm families have historically chosen the F 150 not only for its towing and payload capacity, but because of its flex fuel ability with ethanol. It's a domestic renewable fuel made from corn and refined in many of the communities where Ford trucks are most popular. So we will keep an eye on what that's going to look like throughout the next few months. Additionally, I just have to scroll up to find my next statement that I wanted to visit about, and that has to do with a trade mission that is going to Hong Kong. USDA is taking 3 dozen US business people on a trade mission to Hong Kong. Representatives will be going from grain, dairy, rice, soybean, and the wheat sectors. Participants plan to meet with buyers in both Hong Kong and the Philippines. The mission coincides with a very large food and hospitality trade show going on at the same time. In 2024, Hong Kong was the 18th largest market for us in the US agricultural product commodities. We exported $1.4 billion in goods, although Hong Kong exports have recently been hit by tariffs, especially due to the escalation on imports from China. China's retaliatory tariffs do not hit Hong Kong bound US exports. So Hong Kong has separate customs territory and maintains zero tariffs. So looking to do more work with Hong Kong. Now, additionally, there was some news the other day in regard, I think it was probably yesterday or day before, in regards to a situation with 2,4-D. Many of us use 2,4-D for a variety of items. I just have to find our news tidbit so I can fill you in on the details. and I believe it said something about green lighting the. Here we are. U.S. green lights the duties on 2,4-D 2,4-D herbicide imports from China and India. This comes from the Commerce Department's U.S. Trade Commission, and it voted to affirm that domestic 2,4-D producers were materially injured by imports of herbicide from China and India, which it found were being subsidized by their governments and dumped into the U.S. market, meaning sold at a less than fair value. The decision has arose from a petition that was submitted a year ago in March, particularly from Corteva Agrisciences, the sole U.S. producer of that particular herbicide. 2,4-D, which has been around since World War II, is used heavily still throughout our cropping systems, whether we're using it in wheat, corn, and soybeans. Now, U.S. agricultural interest groups have refuted Corteva's claims and urged the U.S. International Trade Commission against the duty, saying it could result in higher costs to farmers who are already in a very challenging economic environment. Corn groups claim that Corteva has been utilizing more than its limited domestic 2,4-D production for its Enlist Duo formulation, leaving formulators to rely on imports. And they warned that new duties would limit access to an important source of less expensive generic 2,4-D, which is used in over 1,500 different herbicide products. But ultimately, the International Trade Commission was not swayed by those factors, voting to move ahead with the duties. Commerce Department is set to announce a final action in mid-May. Once duty orders have been in place for 12 months, interested parties may request an administrative review of those duties. So those are just a few of the topics that are hitting us locally and lately when it comes to farming and industry. Now, one positive that I did read as well comes to the fact that there are some exemptions being made on new auto tariffs. And what that shows is a good sign for ag lobbyists. So, lobbyists for the agricultural interests have talked to AgriPulse, and they see the tariff relief that Trump is offering to the automakers as a positive sign for U.S. ag interests. Car manufacturing, no doubt, is very important. So, as a domestic ag industry, seeing an administration's willingness to give a little relief truly is a good sign for the U.S. ag sector, given there was an insistence that there would be no carve outs. So, lobbyists have added that the administrative officials have become more receptive to meeting with industry leaders, probably in part because hiring has allowed for more staff to hold these types of meetings. So, we will see what that begins to look like, but it does seem positive to help us out over here in the agricultural world. Well, it is spring season. It's warming up. Some of you are already out there hunting for the wild asparagus that grows in the tree rows, ditches, and so forth. And if you are, keep an eye out for ticks. They certainly are going to be on the rise as we see the warmer weather. Now, the black-leg tick or a deer tick has been known to carry Lyme disease. More of the deer ticks are being found in western South Dakota, eastern Montana, and we've had them found here in North Dakota as well. So be aware, make sure that you are doing your best to cover exposed skin so the ticks can't burrow in. Also, as we see climate patterns fluctuate, the longer term outlook is that the tick species is going to be increasingly found in new places that it hasn't been before. Ticks also bring problems to your dogs and cats. It's best to make sure that you look them over carefully, treat accordingly, and follow label instructions. This is something I didn't know. When it comes to cats, remember, don't use products that are specific unless they are specifically labeled for cats, because some dog insecticides can be fatal to the cats. Nobody wants an upset cat owner. Nobody wants to lose their favorite pet. So make sure to read through those and be best prepared. Well, all this discussion, just me, well, it gets a little boring after a while. So I am very much looking forward to my guest today as we do our segment called Why Do Farmers Do That? We're going to be joined by our super fan from New Jersey, Steve Bello. He's kind enough to send us weather reports, give us ideas for stories and questions, and now he's got a whole list of topics for us to go through today. We will rejoin with Steve after we get back from the markets from the American Ag Network. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Ever so glad that you're joining us. I hope that little bit of wind that blows in this weekend, well, it might be a lot of bit of wind, but let that dry things out. I know there's plenty of folks chomping at the bit to get back into the field. And also, if you're chomping at the bit to listen to something once you're in the tractor, I have a suggestion for you. Our friend Chris Sherman, our cybersecurity superhero, is being interviewed by Shark Farmer, and he's going to be out on the Shark Farmer podcast coming up probably in the next week or so. So keep your ears tuned for that. I think it's going to be an incredibly worthwhile discussion because Chris wants to make sure that you are doing all the right things to support the best cybersecurity for your farm, ranch, grain site, elevator, whatever your business might be as an agribusiness or a farm. Well, today, as we go through our list of discussion topics, I am excited to always hear from listeners, and you can reach us on the JLA phone line, 701-293-9000. I'll be watching for emails, ag@flagfamily.com, and we'll be watching on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Acres TV under Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks to Mitch. Yesterday, he sent me a message about the weather. It was sunshiny when he was over in Valley City. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see that particular message until a little bit later after I was off air. So thanks to folks like you who listen, send us updates, and so much more. And one of those folks who has been really good at chiming in and letting us know what's happening on the East Coast is our superfan friend, Steve Bello. Steve, how are you?
How you doing? It's been a little while. Actually, no, I talked to you last week.
Yeah, you and I talk, and absolutely, you were
Yes.
able to call in not that long ago and just let us know what's going on to the east. So, all
Yeah.
right, we like to talk about why do farmers do that, and I appreciate so much. You came fully armed with a list of questions. What have you got going on today? All right, there it
Oh wait, this is
is.
my shopping list. Sorry. All right, let
Oh,
me find.
don't forget the Oreos when you go to the store, right?
Oh heck yes, heck yes.
Even better.
so,
Okay.
where to begin? You guys are doing wheat for Here We
Yeah.
Grow 25,
Yeah.
or is that happening? I mean, I hear it's been raining a lot. I could be mistaken, but that sounds like a problem.
No, you're not mistaken. That is not necessarily the best situation. So, all right, we are raising wheat. We are raising hard red spring wheat. Our wheat is to be planted southwest of Gardner, North Dakota. We've gotten a lot of rain, so I'm not that far from our field. Here, we've already had over 3 inches of rain in the last 2.5 weeks or so. That shouldn't be as big of a problem as some would think, except that soil type. And our friend Sarah Levis would be happy to share more details about Fargo clay soil types. But what you find is that that is a very heavy soil. Its water holding capacity is incredibly high, which means it's going to retain the water that falls on it, so to speak. So when you think about that heavy clay, it takes a lot to get it to dry out. That ground doesn't just respond pretty quickly. Sometimes in areas like that, drainage can be a concern where water might sit. I think our field is probably going to drain pretty well, but we're not too late yet, Steve. We can still get our wheat in the
Hmm.
ground. In fact, I talked to a couple of farmers last night. They're also waiting to plant more wheat and even a little bit of barley. So we're still going to have that chance to get it planted. We just have to wait until we have enough consecutive days of sunshine and a little bit of wind to get us there. So go wheat. I'm all for bread. No carb left behind.
Nice. But sticking in line with that, what's like the ideal? I hope I'm asking this right. The ideal temperature, because I see
Oh,
like with like when you did soy a couple of years ago, and obviously you did corn last year. There's got to be like an ideal temperature for wheat. I mean, it seems like it's easy to grow. I mean, I'm a Jersey dude. I don't know these things, so
well, I think that's a great question. And actually, I had the opportunity to visit just yesterday with Dr. Andrew Green, who's the wheat breeder for North Dakota State University. And we talked a little bit about why we raise so much hard red spring wheat in this region. And our climate is incredibly favorable to it. We start out with that cooler time frame before we really ramp up into our warmer weather, say July and August. We don't get overly hot, and that allows for great wheat production. Our growing season for wheats is historically a little bit shorter, if you will, than maybe soybeans or corn. And one of the things that happens for wheat, And he mentioned this. It's a priority for the bakers and millers is they talk about the protein of it. Is it a higher protein content or a lower protein content? Depends on what the climate does. That can change that. If we have stress, especially like a heat stress, to wheat at the time that the kernels are filling out, that actually can increase our protein and it makes it a much better product for the millers if they're looking for a higher protein. So we just kind of have got it going on here when it comes to wheat production, particularly for spring wheat. But he did say that wheat is grown in all 48 states, the lower 48. So it's kind of neat to know that I think even Alaska and Hawaii have some wheat planted from time to time. You're even growing it in New Jersey, but it might be a winter
Mm.
wheat versus a spring wheat.
Well, I was going to ask. There seems to be a cycle of what gets grown statewide. Like everybody kind of agrees, okay, we're going to plant this year. It's not okay. North
Mhm.
Dakota is going to do wheat, but South Dakota is going to do corn, and Minnesota is going to do something else. It's very much spread across. Like we're going to do one thing across 50 states, or pretty much 50 states.
There's some of that. I think that's fair to say, is that it probably looks like we sort of have it broken up where it's your year for corn, it's my year for soybeans, that type of thing.
Yeah,
But we have good stability throughout certain acres. So our corn and soybean acres probably don't vary a huge amount, particularly in the US. I always think that as a rule of thumb, we're somewhere out often around like 90 million acres of corn, 90 million acres of beans. We're close to that, right? When it comes to wheat, we've actually been on a downward trend. The last few years, we've grown less wheat. This year, it seems to have a little bit of an uptick. And when Marcia Van Leer from Gowan USA joined us just last week, she mentioned that she's seeing more wheat being planted than she has in the last couple of years. So, yay for us. And Steve, where you're at, you guys are actually more of a garden state. You have a lot of vegetable production, whether you get
yeah.
to see it too often or not.
Mm, like I said, there's one farm near me about a couple of miles away. I should visit it more often. I'll be honest about that. But I know doubts down. Some Jersey people hate the term South Jersey, but if anything past 123 on the Parkway is South Jersey to me. I don't care what anybody says. But down there, you have wide open fields, and I have seen huge corn
Hmm.
stalks in the past, and it's pretty intense. I know if that's just how I describe it.
Yeah.
You know, f- Forgive me if this sounds ignorant, but for you, this is something you see all the time. You grew up around it. This is your life. For
Hmm.
me, it's like, wow, it's not a tall building. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. And I see cows, and it's really neat. So,
I think that it's very cool, and I like that you're seeing those things. They stand out to you more often now than maybe what they did
mm,
before. Um, just a quick side note: my nephew had a group of college wrestlers visit their farm this last week, and this was a group of guys. Some of them are from Minnesota, South Dakota. They had never had the opportunity to be on a farm. They all wanted selfies with the lambs. This is a pretty unique experience. So,
hey,
Steve, it looks like we're gonna have to give you to North Dakota so you can have that same kind of experience, right?
well, as you know, I've been going on YouTube and looking at videos, and you know, I would love to visit it. I really do. And I think the population uh, where you are, I think is like 839. I'd be the best
Yeah.
guitarist in your town. I'd be the only guitarist in your town, I think. But that would be pretty
You
wild.
would.
Like, holy, what's that dude? What's that thing in his hand? Cool.
There was just a stat not that long ago that if you combine the populations of North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and I can't remember if it included, I think it included Montana, those four states' populations is still less than Cook County, Illinois, which is the home of Chicago. Do the
Yeah, I
math on
thought
that one, right?
that was mentioned on one of your shows about a week or so back, if I remember correctly. I'm trying
Hmm.
to retain all this knowledge. It's full of other things besides, but yeah. Speaking of, obviously, we're talking farm stuff. I definitely want to shift gears. I
Okay.
don't even know which one to pick.
Well, I
I'm
tell
going
you
to talk
what,
about the FFA.
we're gonna
Oh,
we're going to talk about FFA when we return, if that's okay with you. We need to touch on our news break. But when we
Mm,
come back, yes, I want to hear your question about FFA because most people who
mm.
listen know they're kind of near and dear to me. We'll be right back. Well, we've been talking about all sorts of things, including wheat earlier, and I just want to make sure to give a shout out to Peterson Farm Seed. They are going to be the folks that are a big part of this project because one, it's Peterson Farm Seed wheat that's going to be going into our Here We Grow project this year. And then that seed's going back to Peterson because it's going to be commercial seed. What does all that mean? I can't wait for the day that Peterson joins us in studio so we can talk about what are all the ins and outs of that. I thought they just sold corn and soybeans, but I think it's more. And also to hire agri-drone service. You just heard Eleanor having the ad run as we were coming back into the show, and it's kind of a new area of industry. We've had and talked about drones for 2 or 3 years, but this seems to be the year that a lot more is being accomplished. We saw a tremendous jump in acres last year with drone agri spraying, and I think we're going to continue to see that this year. If this year tracks weather wise and planting date wise as we did last year, we will certainly see the opportunity for a lot of drone spraying to happen. So, if that's something that you are interested in, curious about, want to ask further questions, you might want to check out Hire Agri-Drone Service because they are right at Leonard, North Dakota and can get in touch with you for your farm. Well, my guest today is Steve Fellow from New Jersey. We are doing the Why Do Farmers Do That? And Steve came fully prepared with an excellent list of questions. And I think one of them is going to be my favorite. So, what do you got,
Well,
Steve?
well, before we do that, I need to tell you the weather. I'm going to do the weather. It's
Oh,
81
go ahead.
degrees
What's
here.
going on in New Jersey? Yeah.
81 degrees, very sunny.
Wow.
Yeah, we've
Tell
been
you what,
having
I should probably.
80-degree days.
How's your wind? Is it bad as ours some days?
Yesterday was actually kind of windy. Today is very calm.
Good, because
You know, my
based on what
hair is
I'm
still
seeing by
straight.
Monday, based on what I'm seeing by Monday, you're going to have a lot of our wind. So good luck. You might want to tie your
Hmm.
hair back. It's going to get a little blustery out there.
Nah, nah, I gotta let the freak flag fly, man. And you're the
You're
wonderful and
all ready to
talented ag
go.
director. You know,
Thanks.
about time somebody said that,
Appreciate
right?
it.
But yes, the FFA.
Yeah.
I don't want to embarrass you. I hope I don't, but it's safe to say that obviously it's very near and dear to you. And
Yes.
when you had the guests, the high school kids, I guess the middle school kids, the joy on your face, the light in your eyes, that's what is truly amazing. And I often, I do wonder when you were growing up in the FFA, did you have opportunities like that to be on radio, on television?
I'm testing my memory here. Uh, there was a decision to drop. I'm testing my memory here. uh, there was a decision to drop Future Farmers of America and just go to the National FFA organization. FFA was always considered farming, but it sounded more professional and more encompassing because there were students from the Chicago High School of Science who were FFA members, but they didn't have a connection to farming. Every state has FFA chapters, including our territories, like Puerto Rico has FFA chapters as well. When I was in high school, there were exchange opportunities with the future farmers of Japan. They also had chapters
Wow.
focusing on agriculture in that country. Um, one of my favorite stories was the year Kelly Evans was the national president, and she went to go visit Japan with her national officer team. She was the only blonde for miles. She stood out in the crowd, you might say. And she said people were fascinated. They would come up and want to touch her golden hair and her blue jacket. So did opportunities exist for media essentially? um, we kind of did. About the time I was graduating from high school was the start of what is now the ag communications contest, where students really do something similar to this as far as their communication skills. If you were going to be on TV, it was a lot bigger deal. I mean, good Lord, not everybody even had a VCR to record that for grandma, but you might get interviewed as your local chapter by a television station from a larger area. If you did, it was probably a pretty short snippet. I don't remember kids being able to work hand in hand with farm broadcasters the way we encourage it here at WDAY, because I'm wanting a student to spend the whole day with us, or certainly an extended period of time, like we managed to do this week with students from Northern Cass and Beulah High School. And I have to say a big thank you to our listeners, folks like yourself, Steve, for taking notice of that and being encouraging of it, because I think that kids don't know what exists outside of Facebook and Snapchat and YouTube, but there's a lot that exists. And to be able to hone those writing and public speaking skills is huge. You're going to need those whether you're in communications, whether you're in sales, or whatever else it might be. Um, for me, a lot of the opportunity came in public speaking contests, no doubt, parliamentary procedure, and simply being able to build that network with other students. Because to me, using a social media platform like X, where that's my favorite spot, and that's where Steve and I converse a fair amount. Um, I think of it like going to state FFA convention. I get to talk to all these other people from other places and compare notes. Except now I'm doing it on a much broader scale than I was just doing when I was part of North Dakota's FFA program. So I hope that answers your question, Steve. There was a lot of
It
things going
does.
on there.
It does. And I mean, you mentioned the public speaking. I mean, I've said this to you, and I can be very candid about this. I think you're fantastic. You have, I say I have a face for radio. You definitely have the voice for it. And you know,
Come on,
uh,
you're in public just like I am.
but when you had those kids on, some of them were nervous as cats, but you loosen them up, I mean, I'm not laughing at the kids, obviously, but it was funny and cute because you were like, you have to speak louder, and you sound like me
Mhm.
when I teach. I'm just like this. Come on, man, turn the amp up a little bit. It's okay, it's all right. And I think for what you and I do, it's complete different ends of the spectrum, but at the same time, we always talk about how much passion there is, and that's really the crux of it. It's like Dale Carnegie said, enthusiasm is a transfer of knowledge, and you're excited and passionate about what you do, as am I with what I do as a teacher, with music. And
Yeah.
if we can shape, I always say, if I have 8 students, if one walks out with their eyes this big, like I learned a new song, and I feel you're the same way. If somebody walks out going, I think I'm going to be a better speaker. Bridgette gave me the confidence to just say, all right, you have to talk a little closer to the microphone and stuff like that. It's the little things that matter. It's really the little things that matter. And I'll ask you
I,
this.
well, I need
Okay.
to make a comment there, Steve, and that is
Go ahead. Go ahead.
because you are a teacher as well, your enthusiasm radiates through your students, but then
Hmm.
also when you're on stage performing. Think of it this way, we're both kind of into heavy metal. Yours is music, mine is combines.
Yes. And I told you I'm gonna get you into some of my stuff. I mean, I got the shirt on, and the whole 9 yards. And you
Absolutely.
have 2 of my CDs. Come on,
Yes, I do.
2 of them. I think two. I think
Yes,
two
I
of them.
do.
But
Yep.
yes. But what I was gonna say was, were you ever aware that you would be a good speaker, or was it something you grew into?
If my kindergarten teacher's comments on my report card are any indication when she labeled me bubbly, I think it was foretold in my future.
Okay. You
Yep.
won't believe me, but I was shy as a kid.
You're
I was
not now,
very
though.
shy. No, well, it depends. It really depends. But as
Yeah.
a kid, I was withdrawn, and then I discovered heavy metal and George Carlin, and I decided I'm just going to
Oh,
be the funniest metal guy alive. You know, I won't say the jokes
that's
on here. Don't
awesome.
worry. But
The FCC appreciates that. And at this point, I bet
yes,
Addison is hovering his finger over the red mute button just in case.
don't you worry, Addison.
Yeah, not to
Don't you
encourage
worry.
it. I have a button. I can press it. I don't want to, but I can.
He has the technology. But
Thanks.
do I have
Yes.
time for one question before break?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, the Heartland movie. I'm glad you sent me that link. And I watched it twice, and I really wanted I should have taken more notes. I'll be really honest. Off the top of my head, it was
Yeah.
obviously a very deep movie, and it was very moving in a lot of ways. And you know, I think the question I could just ask is, this is what I took away, and you can totally
Okay.
correct me. It's fine. I feel like when you're born, all you do is go right into farming. You don't do anything else. you're like it's indoctrinated. Like you are going to be, because I know I mentioned this before. Sarah Levis, who's awesome by the way, I hope
Hmm.
she's watching, was going to be a music teacher, and she decided the pull of agriculture or whatever drew her
Yep.
back. Is it where the second you're born, you're going to be a farmer? That's it.
Um, Boy, that's a good question. And so Steve is referencing the Heartland movie, which was shown by Common Ground in Fargo back at the end of March. That was a movie that followed a farm family from southern Minnesota talking about um, what their farm generations have gone through as they've gone from more of a full tillage program into more no-till regenerative farming. They've changed some of their practices to prevent erosion, etc. And they really did interview the generations there. And I think that's an interesting question is if we're born into a farm family, is it just innately understood that we're going to farm no matter what? Um, the time frame for me was that I always knew my brothers were going to farm and that I was going to have a job somewhere else. Whether it was going to be agriculture or not, I didn't actually figure out until I was in the seventh grade. So you're right. I think there's a strong pull to do that, but it's not easy. There's a lot of folks my age not involved in farming because we got out of college. There were not many opportunities in the industry. There, we were in a down cycle in agriculture. We had lived as high school students through the drought of the late 80s here in the Dakotas, and we didn't feel that there was a place for us on the farm, especially financially speaking. So I think whether or not we continue to farm, we do carry that passion for agriculture. There is something in many of us about wanting to be a part of progress and farming, whether we still garden, whatever the case might be. And my dad used to say that in the spring, his favorite scent was the smell of freshly turned dirt. So I think a lot of times we just carry that with us through our adulthood. So, well, Steve, we didn't quite get to all of your questions today, but it's not the end of the world. Do you want to stay for the rest of the show? Maybe we'll ask a few more things in the next segment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is
All
fun.
right, let's do that because I get to talk about wheat whiskey. Neither you or I are whiskey drinkers, but we're going to talk about wheat whiskey next. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. There's always something new and exciting to talk about here. And today we're doing that with Steve Bello, our friend from New Jersey. And okay, Steve, I know that you and I are not whiskey drinkers, but that's okay. I got a story. So here we go.
Hit me.
If you're familiar with Maker's Mark whiskey, you've probably seen that. They have a distinctive square bottle, the red wax seal on the neck, and oddly, they make sure to spell whiskey without the E as a nod to their Scottish heritage. Well, they are now going from what their typical flavorings look like to a wheated bourbon. They're using a red winter wheat as their grain flavor rather than just rye. Often whiskeys contain rye. So this new wheat-based whiskey is named after their Star Hill farm. There, it's the farm in Kentucky where they produce Maker's Mark. They believe that a lot of their flavor comes not only from their grains that go into the whiskey, but the soil, the wood in the barrels, and the water that's used in the area. So they're going to be releasing this very distinctive grain. They call it a mash bill, and that's going to remove the corn and allow wheat. Here's a little fun fact. Federal regulations dictate that American wheat whiskey must be made from a mash of at least 51%. So this Star Hill Farm whiskey is going to have one of its mash bills with 70% soft red winter wheat and 30% malted barley. The other will be 100% malted soft red winter wheat. So let's be honest. You and I might not be the first ones to rush out and buy this, but
No.
maybe we have friends who will.
Oh, I know I do.
And I would love for folks to test it, to try it out and compare it to what they've regularly drank with Maker's Mark and let us know. I'd be curious if they can taste the difference and what the difference would be going from their regular whiskey to a wheated whiskey that I haven't heard of before.
That's a first for
So
me too.
something different. Yeah. Addison says every time I'm off camera and you see me drink out my iced tea out of my glass, he's not really sure if it's the whiskey
Yeah,
or the iced tea. So
Gets us
yeah,
all
that's what a
every
lot of
he
time.
metal
keeps.
bands did. Yeah, that's what a lot of metal bands did. They made it look like they're drinking Jack Daniels or was iced tea. So
Yeah, iced tea, apple juice, that type of thing.
yeah,
Hey,
Dean Martin did that.
speaking of, yes, speaking of metal bands, you had a list of bands that you were going to bring up. Are
Yes,
we going to talk about that today, Steve?
I
Yeah,
would
what do you
love to
got?
if we got a couple of minutes. Well,
We
I was
do.
joking with you last week about Dr. Emily Fox, how she makes it sounds like the way she talks about things. A lot of death metal bands would be wise to use her terms. I always said there should be a band called Vomit Toxin. I think that would be so brilliant. But
Yes.
but there are a lot of metal bands that are against animal cruelty, and the biggest one, if I offend any listeners, please forgive me, but the name of the band is
Sure.
Cattle Decapitation, is the name of the band, and they are, I think they're vegan. I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of metal
Okay.
bands actually are not. They're opposed to animal cruelty, and Cattle Decapitation is one of them. Megadeth, actually, the song "Countdown to Extinction" is about hunting.
Oh,
Anti-hunting.
oh,
There's a band called
okay.
Feelingless. The name of the album is called Metal Against Animal Cruelty. And
Okay.
Arch Enemy, Gojira, Earth Crisis. There's another band, Heaven Shall Burn. And it's funny because you and I talked a few days ago. Metal gets this stigma. Probably it deserves it, and I love the music. Ozzy biting the head off bats and all this stuff. Obviously, it's shtick. It's what it makes little 13-year-old punks like me go, dude, I got to buy their albums. They're not gonna. Ozzy's not gonna sit there with milk and cookies. He's gonna do something outrageous. Alice Cooper is gonna do something
Right.
outrageous. But deep down inside, you know, these bands actually really care about animals.
Hmm.
I mean, there's pictures of Slayer holding kittens, and I'm like, now that's the bomb. And
So
obviously, yeah,
they just need Dr. Emily Fox and I to join them and
yeah,
explain, okay, make sure we know the difference between animal cruelty and then real life, right? Because we want
yeah.
people to know that life isn't a Disney movie and that sometimes things happen in nature. But I like the fact that they are aware that things can happen and they want to stand up for the fact that, okay, we want people to be good and kind. It's not just a heavy metal music and a bad image, right? There's more to it than that, more
Yeah.
kindness.
Yeah. I hear the music.
I hear the music. Steve, the day went so fast.
I
Thank you
know,
for
my God.
joining us today. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, don't go anywhere. Jay Thomas is coming up next.